What's up, Sky Squad? We are back in the building, and look who we have with us here. It's Adam from Up and Adam. We're doing a Christmas edition for Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Adam, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. You know, it's a holiday week, so you can't be having a bad week on a holiday week. I mean, I've been sick and everything, but today I feel great. So thanks for asking.
I feel like it's been a lot of drama this week in the Bravo world, like just a lot of crap going on. So to me, I haven't even really felt like I've done that much like celebrating in terms of like taking time off or anything like that, because I feel like these people have kept me so busy.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. And it's the crazy thing is it's all over the board with the different franchises too. So there's so much to pay attention to. Can't we just have a holiday week?
I know sometimes, I mean, and I hate to say it, but sometimes I feel like I'm like, can I have a day off? Like, can you guys just not do anything today?
I always do that. I always have to structure my Saturday. I don't even look at YouTube. I don't look at my computer, at any stories, nothing. And sometimes it drives me insane, but it's either that or I'll be single because my fiance will leave me. So I have to pick.
Okay. Totally understandable. Can you hear me? Is this okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we begin this episode with the fashion show. What were your thoughts on the fashion show? And for reference, I'm going to pull up a little something or other for us to view. Okay. We saw Brooks Marks debut his fashion collection, his capsule collection, I should say. Okay. On the runway at the inaugural, it was the first Salt Lake City, Park City fashion show for Sundance. Thoughts on the whole experience, Adam?
Well, I mean, one, I want to know, is there a difference between a fashion line and a capsule line?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So I only called it a capsule collection because it seems as though there's only a few pieces. I mean, i.e. one. And so I wanted to pull it up so that people could actually view it. But you know what? Before you even get into that, for everybody in the audience, I'm going out of order. You know, the first thing that we do on this channel is when we're talking about an episode is we got to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So for me, I want to know in the chat what you guys think about this episode. What is the number that you're going to give it? 1 through 10. Let us know. Adam, tell us, what are you rating this episode? Episode 7.
This was probably my least favorite episode aside from episode 2. So I'm probably going to have to give it a 5.
Ooh, a 5.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
There was nothing really exciting about this episode for me. And I hate to say that, you know, because I know, and we'll get to it, but Jen Shah was reaching into Meredith's marriage. And I get, maybe actually, you know, I have a theory now that we're talking about it. Maybe it's because there was less of Mary Cosby. And I know that sometimes I go in hard on Mary Cosby, but maybe she does add enough dimension to keep me watching. Because this episode, I was bored with Lisa Barlow, Heather Gay. I'm okay. You know what I mean? Going down the line, there was nothing that really kept my attention. I was doing the same thing that you said you do sometimes, is when you're sitting there and you look at your phone and you're doing a million other things and you're not really like immersed into the episode.
Yeah. I'm going to have to be honest with you. I'm going to give it a 5.5. Okay. And I feel like, you know, for me, I agree with you. It was not my favorite episode. To me, I get that they were going for depth with this episode, but I guess what we need with our Housewives franchise is depth and crazy, right? And Mary Cosby does provide us with a good deal of crazy on this show. And we barely got that much. I mean, we barely got what one scene of her, I think. I mean, literally her at the fashion show and then like a glimpse of her and her son. And that was it. And to me, I kind of appreciate the crazy with the depth of, Heather and, also Whitney as well. And even with Meredith's marriage. So I kind of feel like we were kind of cheated a little bit. And I too, usually on some episodes, I'm like looking at my phone, but I made a conscious effort. I said, I'm going to put the phone down and I'm going to just watch the episode. And even then I found myself at certain points zoning out. But I want to actually divert for a quick second because there were a couple of things that happened in the Bravo world outside of what we saw in this episode, which is another reason why I'm going to give it a 5.5, because there was a scene that was released this week of Heather, Whitney, and Jen Shah in the hot tubs outside someplace. And they were arguing because something that Whitney did almost ruined Jen's marriage, according to her. Now, at this point, Jen gets riled up and she starts splashing water. And the producers are literally like, why are you splashing the cameras? So for me, that scene didn't really give us clarity on exactly what Whitney did. But we also didn't even get that scene in this episode. And it doesn't even look like we're going to get it in the next episode. So I'm curious, did you see this scene and do you have any insight on it?
Yeah, so when I watched the scene, and you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure there was something that Whitney was asked not to bring up at Jen Shah's husband Sharif's birthday. And she did it anyways. She brought up this conversation at his birthday, and then it caused this whole fight, and then Jen Shah acting out, which caused Sharif to take himself out of the situation, and then he left for a few days, and she hadn't seen him since, and that's why she was all riled up. But I'm wondering if this goes back now to maybe the Meredith Marks thing, because we see where Jen Shah is teasing Whitney in this episode about maybe Meredith does have a guy on the side, maybe she doesn't, and maybe Whitney brought it up at the wrong time, wrong place at Sharif's birthday party. That's a theory. I don't know, though.
This is the second time this week that we have seen evidence of a husband leaving their wife or their partner for a couple of days and the wife not necessarily knowing where they went. We saw it on Atlanta, and we're also seeing a glimpse of it in Salt Lake City. And to me, I was so intrigued by this, and I was so upset that we didn't get to see it in this episode because I felt like they were kind of leading us to think that it was going to happen last night, and it didn't. Let me just ask you a personal question. If your fiance left for 3 days and you didn't know where he was, how would that work out for you?
Well, it wouldn't work out for me because it wouldn't work out for him. Only because we've been together long enough. I know everything. I have the passwords. I have everything. And there's just, listen, you guys see me on here as like this happy-go-lucky, hey, I can reach a different level of crazy if you start playing with my head and my emotions like that. That's crazy. You can't just leave and not tell me where you're going for 2-3 days, and then you come back and then you're like, it's none of your business. No.
That wouldn't work for me. I think, like you, again, I think we're both cancers. So, for the most part, I'm very calm and relaxed, but there is another side. And to me, I feel like leaving for 3 days and me not knowing where you are, I think that's grounds for a breakup at that point, simply because I just think that that's the ultimate level of disrespect. So it's interesting to me to see that the women on these shows, and comment if you guys are watching in the chat, would this fly for you? Would this fly if your significant other left town for 3 days or however many days, didn't come back and didn't tell you where they were going or anything like that? That to me is grounds for dismissal. But that's just me.
I think there's two other components here that come into play that I don't have to deal with. And I think maybe you don't have to deal with them either, but I don't know the full extent of your situation. So in all fairness, we have kids in play here. And then we also have the husband being the main breadwinner. Whereas like me and my fiance and I, we're pretty equal on financial grounds. And then we don't have kids. So I feel like with these women, they take this crap because what else are they going to do? Who else is going to put up with Jen Shah's level of crazy?
So I'm glad you mentioned that. I wanted to segue really quickly because I think a lot of the most exciting things that happened on last night's show actually happened around the show. And don't worry, guys, for those who actually watched the show along with us, we're going to touch on lightly on those topics. I'm not going to go into full depth on everything from last night, but we are going to take it cast member by cast member and talk through their stories. But since you did mention who's the breadwinner here and breadwinning and bread and just money in general, it looks like there's a little bit of beef brewing between Whitney and Jen, because Jen posted and said, "Don't trust everything you see. Even salt looks like sugar." And then she says, hashtag don't get pricked, hashtag get well soon. And so, Whitney's tagline has something to say with she's not afraid of a little prick or something like that. So clearly, Jen is referencing probably Whitney's tagline and maybe even Meredith's tagline with the get well soon. So then Whitney responds back and says, "I love the open air concept of the new Shah Chalet." Now, here's a reference, because this is on the Bravo by Betches page on Instagram. They capture this moment and they say, for reference, the Shah Chalet on the show was rented and is currently for sale. Thoughts on this, Adam?
Well, one, it does kind of seem like Shah Chalet is portrayed as their number one residence here that they own. They have all of this money. She's come out and spoken about how she spends $50,000 a month plus. So we would be under the impression that they own this chalet, right? But my question is, if they have other properties, where are the other properties, and why don't they just film out of that property? Is it because maybe there's an HOA that won't let them film? What is the actual reason? Because now I'm starting to think about a conversation that we had previously when Brandi Glanville went in on Jen Shah for her husband picking her up in that older car. And she was saying that, the only two things that are fake about the show are Lisa Barlow and Jen Shah and her money. I'm wondering, I don't know. I need more information.
Let's talk about that. Let's dive a little deeper into it, because I'm gonna want to weave this in with her story. So, if it's true that this was rented, I don't know. Was it rented for the show, or was it just a rental that they stay in part-time, or was it, how does that work? Because as you mentioned, there are some franchises where the women live in places where they technically cannot film.
Yeah.
Is that safe to say?
That's definitely safe to say. And that could easily
I've heard that OC is one of them.
OC is one of them?
So that's why a lot of the women live outside in places like Newport. So I'm not sure what the situation is, because that could be a thing. And in which case the women would have to rent homes. So that makes sense. Now, speaking of rented homes, we're going to talk about Lisa Barlow, but I want to mention something here. Whenever I'm looking in Lisa Barlow's house, I can't help it, y'all. It is just in my nature. Every time someone films in their home, I'm looking at the background. I'm looking to see evidence that you live there. And we all know what a lived-in house looks like. Okay? I'm looking for pictures on the wall. I'm looking for things, just evidence of life outside of a camera crew. And I feel like I don't see that in Jen's home. No, well, not Jen. I'm sorry, Lisa's home. So there's something that I'm always looking at with all of these women on these shows, not only just the women, but just in general on reality TV. I'm looking at that. But to take it back to Jen, last night we saw a little bit of a deeper side of Jen, right? I would say.
Yeah, but how?
Okay, let me get rid of this. So, and this is what I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. So last night we get the scenes of her, talking about having to take the anti-anxiety medication, because she had lost her dad, and then Sharif not being around. I felt a little like I was thrown into a story that had already taken place, and I wasn't given much context. And I know that she said in the past that Sharif is not around, and that is the thing, but it doesn't gel for me on camera. I don't know why. And I'm sensitive to that story because I understand I understand being depressed. I understand needing some additional help in that regard. But I feel like the way they're telling me the story, I don't feel as invested in it. What are your thoughts?
You know, it makes sense. It helps me understand a little bit more about why Jen Shah is so erratic in her behavior. But my only thing is, and what I don't understand, right now she's taking this moment and using this moment on this TV show, this platform, to go after Meredith, especially in this episode, in people's relationships and what's going on and why would people separate. But then she's sitting there talking to us, the viewers, about how her husband's never home and how it's really hard for her. So I just hope this isn't one of those situations where one of the housewives digs on another housewife, and then boom, before we know it, they stop filming for a while, it goes off the air, and then we find out that there's some sort of infidelity or something broken within their own home or their own marriage. And that's what I'm getting from Jen Shah. I feel like she's deflecting, and we don't necessarily know what's happening behind her walls, aside from what she wants us to know. But that's very Lisa Barlow of her. Lisa Barlow is controlling the whole narrative of what's going on in her home, and her husband is the one who's kind of breaking face and giving us probably more than what she wants us to have. And for Jen Shah, she's showing us what she wants us to know with her assistants, this glamorous life. But what's happening with your marriage? Why are we focusing on Meredith's marriage? What's happening in your home? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, because it's interesting to me that we don't really get much of Jen and her kids. Her scenes are mostly with what I would assume are paid assistants and with the other girls. So just to kind of go through the myriad of scenes that Jen had last night, we saw her, talking to, I guess, one of her assistants at home about the medication. We saw her open up about why she's on medication, which we all can sympathize with. But we also saw her at dinner with Meredith and Heather, trying to really pull out of Meredith exactly what's been going on. And to me, I felt even more disjointed with this scenario, because last I knew, there was no conversation between Heather and Meredith because Heather wasn't supposed to know about this. So all of a sudden now, how is Meredith supposed to open up to Heather, who really would have had no knowledge of the situation, without Jen telling her in a separate scene? It was never acknowledged that between Heather and Meredith that this was known. So it just struck me as odd that Jen would expect for Meredith to open up about this in front of Heather when she's never had a conversation with her that we've seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually didn't even think about that when the scenes were happening, but no, that makes 100% sense. And, it's interesting to me too, because Jen Shah is supposed to be a friend to Meredith, and Meredith is sitting there thinking that she's having this nice dinner. And like Jen Shah said, she's playing politician, but you're asking her questions about, what's going on in your marriage. And Jen Shah is trying to make her feel comfortable by saying, well, Sharif's never home, but that's not just because something's going on in your home and you're okay with talking about it. You made that conscious decision to put your family out there and your family problems out there. Meredith might not want to put those problems out there. And if she is, with her separation, she's obviously trying to control it because she doesn't want it to affect her kids too much. And we can see in this season, we can obviously see how much her kids' feelings, how that affects her. She seems like a really great mom, and she's super focused on making sure that her kids are okay before her and her husband are okay. And her kids are all adults now.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is, I feel like Meredith's situation is a bit more complex in that regard, because she is having to balance her own emotions with the needs of her kids. You know, I think that's a little different. And it's probably difficult for her to understand and articulate.
The only thing though that I don't necessarily understand is, and I feel like it's a little bit much. I really like Meredith. I really like Brooks, but him going in on the dad and, you know, saying like, I wish my father was here and X, Y, and Z. One, and maybe this is only because I have my own relationships with my family, but one, you're an adult now. And if your dad can't make it because of a work situation or whatever the case is, you have to understand that. But then second, you know, Meredith is sitting here talking to us in the confessionals about, you know, how she has this element of guilt for sending Seth back to work and telling him maybe they need their space. Well, her and her son are so close. Maybe she should have that conversation so not all of the flack is falling on Seth's shoulders.
Yeah, because you could tell. I felt bad for him when Brooks called him after the fashion show, because he does call his dad. For those who were, you know, just kind of tuning in, he calls his dad, and, you know, it's kind of giving his dad a guilt trip for not being at the fashion show. And I felt for him in that moment because I felt like he was a little bit blindsided, because I do agree with you. Meredith should have had a conversation with Brooks and said, I asked him not to be here.
Right.
But like I told you last week, though, if it were me, if I was the daddy, I would have still flown in. Meredith wouldn't have seen me, and I would have still been at that show.
Right. And that's fair, too. But for everybody, it's different. And who knows what's actually going on behind the scenes. And, you know, as much as I love Meredith and she's trying to protect her children, protect Brooks and everything, we already know that the one night that she went home, and she went home early for this sleepover, was because, or when she canceled the sleepover with Jen, was because that was the night that she broke to Khloe with Brooks that her and her husband were separated. So Brooks knows they're separated. He knows what's going on. Why not just have that conversation instead of making Seth look like this
bad dad?
Yeah, I mean, this could be clever editing, but it also, everyone reacts different when you stick a camera in their face. And Brooks had a moment. He took the moment and he kind of ran with it. You know, when he's sitting there saying, like, you know, pretty much calling his dad an absent father and all of this other stuff. I'm just curious how absent he was during his actual childhood, because now at this point, it's like, you're living at home for free. You're getting, I'm sure, for free. I'm only assuming, but I'm sure it's for free. You know, you're getting a lot of help with your fashion line. Your parents are helping put you in the right places. You know, your dad has to work. I understand if he might have missed something, and yeah, that sucks, but you have to kind of balance this out a little bit. He can't just be this awful dad who is giving you all of these opportunities alongside your mom, and then, you know, he misses your first show and now he's world's worst. We need balance.
Thoughts on the fashions?
I thought that Jen Shah kind of hit it on the head. You know, Brooks is very proud. And I think that this is a huge achievement on Brooks' end, you know, and he's aware. Like he said, I don't know how I got into this fashion show. He's like, well, yes, I do. My mom. But he's aware. So that's awesome that he's aware, and he's not just like, yes, I'm the best and that's how I got here. So that's good to see. But I do kind of agree with Jen, only because, you know, back in my day, I was with Wilhelmina and I did different shows, and I did these things, you know, and when you go through different shows, there are multiple fashions. That is a fashion show. This was kind of like Sonia Morgan put together a more complex fashion show than this. And I'm not shading him at all, but I'm surprised that we didn't have more variation, because again, was it just one tracksuit? It was just one, right?
First of all, I love a good Sonia Morgan reference. But I think that there were two. It seems like there was the variation that he had, and then there was the other one, which seems to be the one that's actually for sale. I was interested in the one that he had, and when I went to the website, I did not see that version. So I'm assuming it's maybe not available. But there was a on, if you go to his Instagram page, there's a drop 2 and a drop 1, I'm assuming. And I don't know which is drop 2 and which is drop 1, because when you go to the website, these are the only things that are up there, and it looks like they're sold out. Now, I give him props for, you know, finding the manufacturer, setting up your Shopify page, getting all of this stuff done, because that takes a little bit of ingenuity to get together. But I would have liked to have seen.
But did he?
Well, either him or Meredith. Okay. But I would have liked to have seen a couple, you know, maybe different color combinations would have actually helped, you know, make this a little bit more of a moment, I would say.
Yeah, but the thing is, color combinations would require more money with the manufacturing, and somebody has to pay for that. And right now, Seth and Meredith are obviously paying for this, so they get to decide how many variations of this new endeavor that Brooks is embarking on that he gets. Because when it's not coming out of your own pocket,
well, I mean, Meredith, we need you to invest a bit more coin into this so we can have some other variations so that these can sell some more. I mean, listen, I like the tracksuit. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I like a good tracksuit. I like anything sweats. You got me on anything that's comfy, cozy, because we all not going anywhere, right? So if I can look as fabulous as possible while I'm sitting up in the house, then I will do that. But I'm gonna need a little bit more variety. Just being honest.
Yeah. I agree with you. Like a white version, a yellow version, a nice blue version. No, I agree. At least change the colors. Like you said, just change the colors.
Mm-hmm. Give me more. Speaking of wanting more, let's dive into Heather for a second, because I want to kind of briefly, lightly touch on Heather and Lisa really quickly. Last night, we get really a poignant conversation with Heather about, you know, she's talking to her daughters about the choices that she has made as a mom and as a woman in terms of staying with the church. And last night, it is revealed to us in which I wish this would have happened in a better episode, but she finally makes the big reveal that she wants to leave the Mormon church. Thoughts?
I think that was a huge moment for her. I can't sit here and downplay somebody having this belief system their whole life and having that pretty much control and construct every part of her life up until this point. She has kids because she is Mormon. She has these kids specifically because of her religion. She has had her divorce specifically because of her religion. Her life now, everything has been shaped by being a Mormon. And, you know, now she's coming out and saying, like, especially having this tough conversation with her kids, I want to go out. I want to drink. I mean, she said everything except the fact that she just wants to go out and get laid. That's the only thing she didn't say to them, which they're going to see on the TV show anyway.
It was implied.
Yeah. I mean, it was implied, but, you know, I applaud her so much, especially, again, my fiance is Mormon. He kind of went through his own situation for being gay.
My God.
Yeah. He was gay in the Mormon church and they felt a certain way. And he kind of was pushed out a little bit, and he has his own feelings. And he still, you know, the church also, when his dad got sick, helped completely pay all of their bills and take care of the family. And he has this kind of, I think, love-hate relationship with the Mormon church. And I can see where it can be complicated.
We're going to put a pin in that. And low-key, we have to have a whole different discussion on a whole different day about that in general, because this was a revelation for me. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it was a revelation for me. I will say this. I was proud and happy for Heather in this moment. I love any scene with Heather in it. I'm always glued to the screen when she's on it. She's probably one of my favorite characters on this show outside of Mary and her crazy. But Heather, to me, and she's what I feel like grounds this show, her and Whitney, in this level of realness Speaking of Whitney, last night we also saw her battling with trying to get her dad to stay in the treatment center. Well, in the I forget what it's called.
Sober living.
The sober living, yes. And he wants to leave early, and it looks like he's about to go right back down the same cycle. Now, I didn't see too closely at the end, and because I think I blinked, but did he ultimately decide to stay, or was it undecided when at the end of that conversation?
It was undecided, but it seemed like he was obviously swaying towards feeling like he is strong enough to leave after just 20 something short days of a 90-day program. And like she said, he hasn't actually ever made it to the 90 days. Like, he's left and it's not worked out. So why not just complete it and then see where you go? But this is a tough situation. You can totally see that she's been broken down by this situation so many times. And with every episode, I like Whitney more and more and more because I feel like she's just relatable. We can understand her and she's being authentic, as opposed to, again, I love Lisa Barlow, but I just don't know anything that's complicated in her life. I don't know what she goes through except the fact that she loves everything and everything is almost perfect for her, you know?
But you know what's funny, and I'm glad you brought her up as we sort of segue from Whitney to her. And I will say that watching Whitney last night was literally, and just being completely transparent here, like watching some of my own family members who I've seen struggle with addiction fall back down the same path over and over and over again, despite how many times you try to help them. And at a certain point in time, it's like, when is it time to let go?
Yeah.
You know? It's hard because you don't want to do that to family. Speaking of Lisa, last night we really see her and her husband having conversations about slowing down. And I think this is probably where we're going to end up getting the realest Lisa Barlow, is in her desire to be so alarmingly perfect and achieve so much, is where it ultimately is backfiring on her. Because really, you see her, and if you watch episode 2, I know it's your least favorite, but if you watch episode 2 and you go back and you watch her arguing with Whitney and with Heather and how she dismissively steamrolled them in the conversation, she does the same thing to her husband. She didn't even allow him to answer questions that it was so weird to me. She would say, so, I don't think I should slow down. I mean, do you? You don't think I should slow down, right? No? Okay, of course not. It was like, are you going to let this man talk or not?
Well, that's her way of controlling the conversation and having it portrayed exactly like she knew coming into this show. I think that she completely knew. I mean, she was on an episode of what is it called? What are the Shahs called?
Shahs of Sunset?
Shahs of Sunset. Why did I blank on that? Lisa Barlow was in an episode of Shahs of Sunset way back when, and she was on the phone with one of the women where she was trying to make a business deal. She obviously knows the ins and outs of Bravo. She's a very well-versed housewife. She knew how she wanted to portray herself, how she wanted to come out of this, and that was to be looked at like she has it all together. She is this businesswoman who's striving for $1 billion brand, and she's not going to stop, and everything at home is perfect. She has a husband that they have, some little basic problems, but they keep it together, and that is what it is. She wanted to control the narrative. She's not as organic as the other housewives who are talking about battling the Mormon church or addiction issues or infidelities or separation. She's not talking about these things. And like you said, when she's having the conversation with her husband, I hate to use the word steamrolling, but she does kind of steamroll the conversation because she doesn't want him to slip up. And he is more capable of slipping up than she is, 1,000,000%.
The problem with that is that just as someone who has done reality television, I can tell you with absolute certainty, portraying an image is one of the hardest things to keep up on these types of shows. And despite how hard you try, the camera has an interesting way of still capturing who you really are. It may not happen today. It may not happen tomorrow. But I'm just as sure as the day is long, as I'm sure Giselle is finding out right now, and many others find out along the way. You're going to slip up because there is no way you can keep up that facade. And with that many cameras around, many well-versed producers around, and a smart audience. And we as an audience have been doing this for a long time now. So we know when something doesn't feel real. And so I think what Lisa's going to have to do at some point is just be. The businesses will still run. Everything will still function like clockwork because she owns the brand. And that's the thing. And you look at, and a good example of this is Dr. Heavenly. If any of you guys watch Married to Medicine, Dr. Heavenly can literally get on camera and say whatever she doggone well pleases. And her business has picked up immensely since she's been on the show because she owns who she is. And I think for Lisa, it's okay to not be perfect. Your businesses will still run, and they'll probably run better because people will understand and see something in you that you weren't willing to give before, because people want to see somebody relatable, just like with Whitney.
Well, in all fairness too, you know, by her being her most authentic self and not so much focusing on the businesses, like I was watching an Instagram live yesterday where Whitney was talking about her businesses and people were like, what do you do? And she's like, I have a business. It's just not shown as much. It's not that as much of my storyline for this season. Hopefully you guys will get to see more of that part of me next season. But for Lisa Barlow, it's like, she has to step up and show us her authentic self. And from that, her businesses will thrive anyways, because she'll have the platform of being on the show. So Vida Tequila will always be around from her just being herself. Whereas if she keeps giving us this kind of fabricated version, or not fabricated, but just like putting this smoke shield in front of us, then eventually her time on the show will run out. And when that happens, she'll have to work even harder to keep pushing Vida, whereas it could have just been.
Exactly. That's the thing, because they're not going to keep you around if you're not, if all this is an advertisement for Vida Tequila. I want to briefly touch on, before we go, I want to touch on Whitney and Jen having a conversation about Meredith, wherein Jen really leads Meredith to believe, and then she tells us, the audience, that it was looking like Meredith was already creeping with another man when they was all in New York. Now, I got to say something. It appeared to be that there was a cash trip of some sort that happened previously that was not shown on this season. Now, from what I've heard is that there were two production companies that handled the production for Salt Lake City. And apparently something happened earlier on where all the women went to New York. I'm not sure what it was. We've heard Mary reference this trip to New York. We've also heard, and Mary mentioned it, I think, offline in an Instagram, because she was describing why the convenience store conversation with Jen happened. Okay. So for those of you guys who may have missed that. So then we get another incident where Jen tells us about the trip to New York as well. And Meredith ends up, this guy is adamant about Meredith, taking Meredith back to her room, or making sure she gets back to her room safely. What were your thoughts about this?
So I've said this to you a couple times. When Jason and I did for the first episode, the virtual premiere party, Meredith's party, she was sitting there and everybody, all of these Bravo super fans, got to ask her questions, and they were going around the virtual chat just asking her things. And one thing was, you know, since you've been able to see the whole season now, is there anybody who you were surprised that they went in their confessionals and kind of betrayed you? Or did that not happen at all? And she said, yes. There was somebody who I thought I was really close to. And after watching the episodes and watching them go around and spread these lies about me, and she called them lies, I was shocked. Now I know exactly what she was talking about, which was obviously Jen Shah, but I'm just so confused as to why Jen Shah is gunning for her so hard. And I'm wondering if it's, again, a deflection from what's actually going on with her marriage. Like, you're talking about when you're separated, or if you're not getting it at home, you're going to go get it somewhere else. Well, your husband's never home either. So is he getting it somewhere else? Are you getting it somewhere else? And is this a deflection? That's what I want to know. And I think that it's really kind of, Whitney is now the second person that you've went to about this. She's not going to go to Mary Cosby. She's not going to go to Lisa Barlow because she knows Lisa and Meredith are like this. So she really only went to the only two people that she knew she could talk to about this. And had there been more, I feel like she would have went to the other ones. And that's not a good friend.
Honestly, I'm gonna tell you the truth. You know, I think if I were ever to, and I always put myself in these situations, like if I were ever to do a reality show, you know, this moment didn't even happen on camera. That's one thing. And I hate / love, okay? I love it as a viewer. Hate it for what it does to the other person. But when they bring up an off-camera moment and they bring it to the show, that gets really dicey because this wasn't even, was it filmed? We don't know. We do know that there was in New York at this point. So did she think that it was fair game because she thought maybe it had been filmed and maybe she needed to talk about it? Because obviously, as many housewives have said, if it happened on camera or where the cameras were around, then we can talk about it. Or it's going to come up at some point. Was it that type of thing? Or was Jen just being a really bad friend in this moment and just spilling all of Meredith's tea? Regardless, I wouldn't have done it. There's no way I would have done that. No. And if she was, and to me, to really be honest with you, if she was going to do it and make it a moment, I felt like she should have done it to Meredith. She should have said, you know, when we were in New York and that guy said that he was going to take you back to his hotel room, I want to know what happened. No, that would have been interesting.
She wouldn't have gotten the time of day, though.
Probably not. But I think what she did was probably going to make it an even bigger mess.
I think this goes back to, we're dealing with a bunch of housewives who are very well versed in housewives. And I think she knew by having this conversation, she's planting the seed. She knows that she has her marital kind of issues with Sharif. She's now had a conflict with Mary Cosby where she snapped a few times. Okay, so she's kind of making a good housewife, right? And now she's adding another conflict into this season with her, I would say, former best friend at this point. I think she knows exactly what she's doing, and that's why she's doing it. But I was kind of more interested to see when Whitney was like, Jen, what are you talking about? And then she goes in the confessionals and she's like, don't just pretty much plant this seed and not have anything to back it up. You better be able to back that up when you're talking about somebody's their marriage, their relationship of 20 years. So again, I'm always impressed with Whitney more and more with every episode.
I mean, especially with that bit of shade that she posted in the online. That is our review for Salt Lake City. I feel like we are literally two detectives on the case trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Guys, listen. Adam, what do you got going on your channel? What do you got going on coming up? Anything in the next couple of days outside of celebrating the holidays?
No, I'm going to sit down in my pajamas on my couch, watch Home Alone. I'm checking out of Bravo. I'm checking out for the weekend. I am trying to enjoy the beach. I'm going to do something that is not YouTube for this weekend. But with that being said, I still love everybody who comes to my channel and hangs out with us. It's always a blast. And, you know, I know you're going to say, Adam, where's your channel? So I'll just say it. It's Absolutely. Up and Adam. And no, I just wish everybody a happy holidays. It's nice that, you know, like you said, we were talking about this and you weren't going to do videos today. I wasn't sure if I was going to do videos today, but it's, you know, it's not Christmas yet. So now after this, it's Christmas.
Absolutely. I just also like being able to provide content, because a lot of people are at home and, just give people something to do and something to get excited about. And hopefully this got people excited as it did me, even though the episode was a little bland. Yeah. But it's always fun talking to you about it and sort of deciphering what we see on the screen and trying to unravel the mystery of what's actually going to happen and what's really going on. For me, I will be just here celebrating the holidays indoors. I'm excited about Wonder Woman because most people probably don't know this. I am a Marvel geek. So anything Marvel, DC related, and I know this is DC, but anything like superhero related, I am all about it. That is probably my second biggest obsession outside of Bravo. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Otherwise, guys, enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're celebrating, enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we will see you in the next video.